Friends, today I'll explain you what is complaints department in bank, what is their principles, what is their structure, so what is their roles and responsibilities. Okay, so in in present scenario, we have lot of statutory bodies, Reserve Bank of India, SEBI, IRDI, all these are statutory bodies. Day to day, these statutory bodies sending some guidelines, notifications, circulars to the financial institutions and banks to follow these rules. Some will be circular, some will be guidelines, and some will be notification. Complaints department in a bank, they'll get all this information from the statutory bodies and they'll make a checklist, and each point they'll assign with the department. For example, point 1 is applicable to finance department, point 2 applicable to IT, point 3 applicable to legal. They'll list out all the points and they'll map with the department. Then this will be implemented in that department so that future risk will be mitigated. So these people will identify the they'll get the information from statutory bodies, they'll make a checklist, they'll map with the departments and they'll monitor, and these things are implemented or not, they'll verify time to time. So today I'll explain you the high level compliance department structure, their duties and all. In my next video, I'll go as a detailed for each and every role. So critical component of financial institutions operations. Yes, compliance department is a critical component of any financial institution. Its primary role to ensure the financial institution complies with all the relevant laws, regulations, thereby preventing the data theft and potential fines from government of agencies. So already I discussed whatever the statutory bodies, they'll send the notification, circulars, guidelines. If you are not following these guidelines or circulars, you may you may you may find by the government agencies not following these rules, or you may end up with risk loss. So to eliminate all those things, you have to follow the complaints point which are received from the different statutory bodies. The complaints policy aims to managing complaint risk and also oversees its implementation. Besides ensuring the complaints issues are resolved effectively, extensively assistance with the so these complaints staff will assist you to follow the complementary points, complaints points. So if you follow these things, your risk will be less in the future. So what is the objective of the compliance department? Standards and procedures relating to compliance function, which are in line with the international and national practices. Yes, so whatever the standard procedures which are available, those are equal to national and international standards that should be compliant and that should be followed in our organization. To propagate compliance functions are integral governance, internal control. Yes, to propagate compliance function, internal control and risk management process. This will discuss in next slide. All the constitutions for the ensuring preventive measures, all preventive measures before happening any risk, they want to prevent. If risk happens also, they want to mitigate the loss, to prevent material financial loss or loss of reputation. For example, your customers financial data or sensitive data, if it has gone out from your organization, it will be a reputation loss, because the new customers, they are worried about joining, they are worried about starting a relation with your bank. So you have to follow all these complaints point so that you can prevent the material financial loss. Maybe some transaction you may lose money also. Reputation data, something like, okay, suffering from one failure complying with the laws, regulations, rules relating to the regulatory organizations. Already we have discussed whatever the regulatory bodies, they'll give the laws, regulations, rules, we have to follow. To framework bank-wise compliance functions, which would help senior management and board to recognize the legal and reputation risk the bank, which required to be monitored and mitigating compliance risk already discussed. So, bank-wise framework they'll design. So, this will help the senior management and board to recognizing the legal and reputation leaks. Okay, to introduce a healthy compliance culture with the organization so that compliance function effectively compliant with. Okay, so there should be a healthy compliance with all the department so that they'll follow and they will effectively implement these compliance points in their departments. So, what is the structure of the compliance department? So, this compliance department will be set up in head office, and whatever the staff they have posted, they are adequate. They want like they need adequate people to complete all the compliance points sent to the different departments. It may be monitoring, testing, everything they have to do. Well qualified staff, yes. People are having experience in law, accountancy, information technology, and they have a practical experience. Those people will be involved in the compliance department. Some people they'll take a external training also to come for the compliance department. Designing of compliance officer, each head office department, zonal office, branch took place in framework mechanized through the compliance functions. All the functions, so they have a head office, they have a zonal office, then regional office. So they'll set up the different officers, compliance officers in different designation depend on your business. So somebody is a big organization, they'll have a head office, they'll have a zonal head office, zonal office, regional office, or nodal branches. They can keep the compliance officers. A product or process is approved by the compliance officer. Yes, any new product. Previously, bank or financial institution, they are coming with a new product. Normally, what they'll do, they'll take a permission from operation team, they'll take the permission from IT, they'll take the permission from the business team, they'll take the permission from the finance. But now every product and process should be approved by compliance officer. So they'll identify if you are giving loans to certain area, they may say like it is a risk. Okay, a lot of floods affect this area, so you may not entertain to give the loans to those people. Like that, they'll find out all the risks and they'll see that uh, compliance department they'll suggest you to not to go for the process or product, and so every product and process should be approved by compliance officer. Monitor the prescribed procedure. Yes, these compliance department will see that they'll monitor, not only giving the procedures to the departments, they'll monitor also, measure the compliance. If risk happens, what is the measure, what is the okay, for example, data loss is there, so whether 100 customers data has gone out or one branch, one region, they'll measure the compliance risk. Compliance risk assessment templates, they'll prepare a assessment templates. For example, you want to join a company, you'll have a written test, you'll have an interview, you'll have a group discussion. So everything you'll have a pattern. Same way, risk department also they'll have a templates. So any compliance risk assessment, you have to follow the templates. Regulatory and statutory guidelines, that already we discussed. The guidelines given by the regulatory, it may be RBI, it may be SEBI, it may be IRDA. We have to follow the, these departments see that those things should be followed by the departments. So, what are the compliance department shall download the regulatory statutory notification circulars, guidelines from below mentioned departments: Reserve Bank of India, Ministry of Finance, Securities Exchange Board of India, Indian Banks Association, Central Vigilance Commission, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority, Financial Intelligence Unit, Bank Codes and Standard Boards of India, DIGC, Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation, National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development, NABARD, NHB, National Housing Board, Clearing Corporation of India. All these statutory boards, whatever circulars comes from these departments should be guidelines. It may be circulars or it may be notification. These should be available in the website, and these should be assigned to the concerned department to follow and we have to report to the board of directors also any risk happened. So, first more level will be the chief compliance officer. Is the highest position in the compliance department. He should not be not less than deputy general manager cadre. He should be equal to deputy general manager cadre or more than that. And when you select the compliance officer, fixed term should be there. Maybe should be selected 5 years, 10 years. And whatever the compliance officer contact between regulatory authority should be RBI, and complaints officer remove, transfer, anything should be approved by the board or audit committee. Reserve Bank of India shall kept informed that whenever a new chief complaints officer joined or he may be transferred, he has removed, all information should be sent to RBI. For the information, introduction of existing new amendment guidelines issued by the regulators, time to time their implementation shall ensure they appoint the compliance officer. So, whatever the new amendments, guidelines coming to implement these things, chief compliance officer ensure that appoint compliance officer depend on the branches, depend on the size, depend on the staff. They may implement in head office, zonal office, regional office, or nodal branches. They can appoint the compliance officers. And roles and responsibilities. So, one roles and responsibilities first will be this is related to compliance department. The board of directors ensure that an appropriate compliance policy is in place. So, compliance policy should be prepared and should be approved, and this should be available anytime. You can access and you can read. Ensure that compliance issues are resolved effectively and speedily. Okay, we'll see. You see that board of directors, all the compliance issues should be resolved. No potential for any conflict of interest and the activities. Yes, review compliance functions itself. Then what is the role and responsibility of the senior management? Establish a written compliance policy. Yes, compliance policy should be written and it should be signed and should be available for the review, or it should be available for the circulation. Ensure that appropriate remedial action. Yes, before happening some risk, we have to take some remedial action. Ensure the compliance department identifies compliance list. Yes, the senior management, they'll identify the list of compliance points and submit the same to the board of directors. This is the senior management role and responsibility. Chief compliance officer. So, we have a lot of people involved in the compliance department. Now, only we have discussed the senior management and board of directors, then chief compliance officer, but detailed level we'll discuss in next video. Chief compliance officer, compliance policy of the bank formed, approved by the board of directors, as already discussed, and he will be report to the executive director of the bank. And written submission monitoring portals, all or wherever portals we have to update the returns, we have to, you'll see that everything will be uploaded into the portal. Submission of the prescribed quarterly complaint. Yes, statutory organization, they will give the certain formats. In that format, data should be sent to the compliance department quarterly. Certificate by the all the HO departments, all head of the department, they have to certify that all complaints points related to their department are implemented and monitored, that they have to get the sign from each head of the department. Other roles are complaints officer at head office, HO department, zonal complaints officer. So, we'll discuss in next video about the other roles and their responsibilities. Principles of complaints. What are the principles? So, these complaints people be looked at as a friends, and they have to guide the business units. Business units are the operations department, branch operations, back office, loans department, underwriting department. They'll treat others as a friends and they have to guide them, and have a right to access information necessary to carry their responsibility. Depend on their responsibility, they have to give the access of the information. For example, for the manager, different access. For the auditor, different access. For the teller, different access will be given to the information. and like MIS information will be given to the senior management and top management, where you can see the bank growth, year on year growth, month on month growth. These are not available for the normal tellers. Be empowered to conduct complaints, reviews, investigation wherever required. Yes, be free to report any irregularity without fear, disfavor from the management or other staff members, board of directors. Without any fear, you find any complaints gap is there, complaints point is there, they are not following. It may be KYC document, or it may be NPA, it may be NPA provisioning. Okay, you should not give any favor to anybody without any fear. All these points should be reported to the board of directors. Identification, identify the compliance functions of their department. Yes, you have to identify the complaints points and related departments also. Consolidate the list shall be approved from the chief compliance. Okay, all the consolidated should be approved by the chief compliance officer for the finalization. Final list compliance functions and complaint manual shall be circulated compliance officer. So these functions and manual should be circulated among the complaints officer. These complaints officer will be sitting at branches, nodal offices, regional office, zonal office, and head office also. Review and reporting, not only giving the functional points to the departments, complaints officers, report introduction, withdrawal of the complaint from their department to complaint report. Okay, so any the list will be there, complaints points. Some it may be they'll introduce new points, they remove some old complaints points. So report introduction complaints function in their department to the complaints department. Yes, a complaints officer shall report quarterly status complaints to their next higher level authority. For example, branch people will report to quarterly report to nodal people, regional people to zonal complaints department. They will submit the quarterly report. An annual report of complaints failure, breach, adverse finding reported. So one annual complaints point which are failed or which are not implemented, that should be reported. Non-compliance with any regular guidelines, administrative actions initiated against the bank. So if you are not following any complaints point, then you may your organization may be fined from the regulatory guidelines. Place annual review note. So they'll prepare annual review note along with revised modified list of complaints points to be followed for the next financial. What is the complaints point for this year and what are the removed and added for the next year? It should be submitted to the board. Monitoring and testing. So periodical reports confirmation submitted by the zonal compliance officer. Head office compliance officer shall be submitted to the testing by the compliance department. Yes. So already we have discussed you have a zonal compliance officer and head office compliance officer. These will submit the report to the zonal compliance officer. During the management audit, HO department zonal officers are authorized to make a specific checklist introduced by the company. Okay, during the audit, head of the department zonal officers, they have to follow the auditor's checklist. Same way they have to follow the compliance department checklist, and the auditors should see that all these points are followed. Auditors they'll prepare normal audit points and any findings. Same way they should get the complaints points and any findings they have to report separate list and should be submitted during the audit report, management audit report. So while giving the audit report to the management, they have to give the normal findings and complaints point findings also they have to submit. During the management audit of head of the departments, zonal offices, the auditor shall use the checklist introduced by the complaint. Yes, so management audit they have to use the checklist introduced by the complaints. They'll have a regular checklist. With that checklist, they have to get the complaints department checklist and they have to see that all these points are implemented. Thank you friends. If you like my video, please subscribe and share with your friends also.